Happening right now in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial, a former hotel security guard who is currently an officer with the Los Angeles police is testifying for the prosecution.
He was the assistant director of security at the Intercontinental Hotel back in 2016 when Combs was captured on surveillance video attacking his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. The prosecution just played a part of that surveillance footage for the jury. Back with us to discuss is Ariva Martin, civil rights attorney and legal affairs commentator. Also with us, Richard Gabriel, a veteran trial consultant and president of Decision Analysis. He's also the author of Acquittal, which highlights his work on several high-profile cases. I just want to point out we got an update from our reporters in the courtroom that says that the video that's now being shown to the jury shows Flores escorting Combs back to his room, followed by Cassie Ventura walking down the hall after them. I wonder, Richard, what you make of this video being played, how early it is in this trial that they're having this security guard testify to what happened, and how central it is to the entire case.
Well, I think, as always, you want to make an impact early on. There's this primacy effect where jurors are paying attention as early as the case. They've just heard opening statements from both sides. So I think the prosecution says, look, we want to present something visual, not just verbal testimony, to really reinforce their concept that this guy is a violent abuser. And so playing this very early on sort of cements that with the jury, hopefully will create sort of emotional impact with them that's then supported with a lot of the testimony that's going to follow.
And Ariva, we've already heard from the defense what they're trying to explain here, right? Domestic violence is not sex trafficking, that is going to be the counter argument. They're trying to say, as they did in the opening, that this was about jealousy, or that in this case, I think, as they put it, Combs was on bad drugs during this incident. When you are hearing, though, or you're seeing what this officer is describing, the details about encountering Combs, that he tried to give him a wad of cash, he said, which he interpreted to be a bribe, and he refused. He tried to steal another security or grab another security guard's phone, accusing him of recording it. What does that tell you about how the defense's argument here may or may not work?
Well, it's clear, Brianna, that the defense knows that it has a very difficult case, and they're going to have to explain a lot of what Combs did on that day and what he did throughout the years that he was involved in the relationships with the various victims that are going to testify in this case. And I think we shouldn't underestimate how much information the prosecution is going to bring about how individuals like Cassie Ventura and other victims, how they behave in these kind of coercive relationships. There's going to be psychological testimony from an expert explaining why someone like Cassie maybe didn't want Flores to call the police in that moment, why some of these other victims perhaps didn't go to the police right away. So it's not just going to be the testimony of these victims, which is going to be horrific enough, but it's going to be experts coming into this courtroom, giving these jurors a really good education on why we see victims behaving the way they behave, that it doesn't excuse or exonerate the conduct of their abusers.
And to that point, Richard, we see here that Flores testified that Cassie didn't respond to any of his questions, just saying, I want to leave, I just want to leave. When asked specifically why he didn't call police on his own, he said there was no victim here. There was obviously no one that was going to press charges. I wonder what you think the defense will make of that.
Well, again, the defense is obviously saying this is consensual. Yes, it is. I think they even admitted this is domestic abuse, but this is not racketeering and is not a pattern of behavior here. And they're going to say this is a bad relationship where the behavior may be bad, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't consensual. And so it is a difficult thing. I think a lot more jurors these days are aware of sort of this dynamic, that this power differential that can happen in a relationship where sometimes a victim is sometimes is asked very candidly, do you want to press charges? And they respond no, but because they feel internally conflicted about that. So I think the point that there's going to be expert testimony to explain why she's non-responsive or may not also be affirmative in trying to do this is going to explain some of this behavior. Nevertheless, the defense is going to, when they get the opportunity, they're going to try and say these are strong women and have the ability to have made the exit on their own.
Ariva, I also just wonder, there's this video, right, that the jury is seeing. We also expect for them to see videos of these sexual encounters that you have the prosecution saying that these were coerced, these were not consensual. The defense is saying they were consensual. They were what Diddy allegedly referred to as freak-offs. It's going to be incredibly graphic. Even the defense has said that. Just this medium of watching these videos, how effective is that for how a jury perceives these moments or how they may be convinced?
Incredibly powerful. Listening to a witness testify is one thing, but seeing graphically something played out on a video, listening to an audio tape, listening to a phone call, that takes jurors into that moment. That gives them almost a real-time experience in terms of what was happening. What they see on that video, they get to feel it in a visceral way that testimony can never provide for them. And that's the problem with defendants like Diddy and others in high-profile cases involving sex trafficking that we've seen. When you have videotape, when you have audio tape, and you have more than one witness, let's be clear, it's not just going to be Cassie Ventura telling her story of coercion and sex trafficking. It's going to be other victims coming forward as well. So even if a juror is thinking, well, maybe this was a bad relationship, did he have bad relationships with all of these victims? Is this pattern something that was prevalent in all of these relationships? That starts to make jurors believe that the defense and the story they're putting forward is unbelievable. So the videotape is going to be probably the most powerful piece of evidence we see in this case.
Arriva Martin, Richard Gabriel, appreciate you both. Thanks for joining us.